You were absolutely right.
I wish I had pressed record before you said that. You know, everybody's got a different God, you know, right? It's just life. Dennis, how is your God doing this week?
Oh,
Has anything happened since we spoke last?
Yeah.
Yeah? What happened?
Yeah.
Because last week we were a little bit worried.
It was an election.
An election?
It was an election.
Who got chosen?
Well, wait, let me start over. There was a so-called election.
Oh, right.
So-called election. Yeah. It really was an election. And I'll tell you, this is what I know. And this is a fun fact to start. That the start of networks calling races began in 1848 because it was a disorganized process at the time, and because the Electoral College didn't allow for final accreditation of the president for weeks, a month after the election.
Right.
So the news, for the first time, began to report who the winner was, and back in the day, it was who the winner was, not a projected winner. They didn't have the data capabilities, but they actually don't have any legal standing.
Who could forget back in 1848 when CNN called the election? It's
yeah.
You know, Wolf Blitzer was a little bit younger,
but they would just report. They took it. Uh-oh, what was that? Reconnecting. Did you see that? Ooh, flash on my screen. Whoa. Yeah. So while this was happening, and the thing I got to say is that I was worried. I was biting my fingernails throughout those days as Pennsylvania began, and you knew the projections finally, and Steve Kornacki and the Kornacki Cam, which was the fabulous magic board that they use, the big board as he calls it. But what I hadn't thought about, which was largely due to my duress, was what's going to happen immediately after Biden wins. I had a vague fear that there would be a negative uprising element of the increasingly organized brotherhood that is drink the Trump Kool-Aid. But what I didn't expect, what I didn't think about, was the celebrations. And so when that happened, and it hit me, and I said, holy fuck, had a few beers, and watched it until the early into the wee hours, and just city to city, and to thank our brothers and sisters in Philadelphia.
Amen.
For doing the thing and coming out in numbers, and Stacey Abrams in Atlanta. And Georgia now has been officially allowed for a hand recount of over 5 million votes.
Nice. Because
Biden has won by a mere something or other. But nonetheless, it was a great day, and I was unexpectedly jubilant and near tears from the relief that I really didn't have to consider that we would pack up and move to Canada if we could learn to speak Canadian. But yeah. And now Biden, who very smartly says, we're planning a transition. I've got a COVID team. I'm naming my transition heads. We got a lot to work from. What he wants to do to delay this, which is a formal procedure. Here's the point about the procedure. The woman who works for the federal government, who isn't, in fact, a appointee, not a civil servant, she works for Trump. Mm-hmm. She has a law that says that she needs to certify that it is the expected president. And that's the language, but it leads as a subjective decision. As it turns out, when you say the networks called it, the response, which is accurate, is, well, that they don't have legal standing.
That's just what Rudy said.
Mm-hmm. And Rudy, in the goddamn parking lot of the Four Seasons Landscaping Company. He had done that last time we spoke. Isn't that true?
No. That was post-election. In fact, I have this background that I can put on. Breaking, coming to you from the Four Seasons Landscaping Company.
If you pan to the right a little bit, there should be a water hose wound hanging. It was a remarkable moment. In the clip, did you send it to me? Or did I say it? No, I saw it ran into it on the net, where he's looking up at the sky, and it appears that he's heard for the first time that Biden has been called. And he goes to the person in the crowd and says, who said so? And the guy said, well, networks call it, AP call it. And he looks up at the sky and he says, oh, the networks, the mighty networks.
Yeah.
It was such a crazy moment.
But that was the only reasonable play in that scenario, was to mock the idea that you just espoused yourself, that the networks are in any way official. Right. So I can't blame him for that, despite all the blame that he deserves for being Trump's lackey. But yeah, so
over to the right a little bit, so that when we look at your background, you can see the water hose, because it's my favorite thing in the whole picture.
Yeah,
as listeners can
so
see.
My reaction the day after, when I woke up, because just 4 years ago, I woke up and I was serving my children breakfast when Trump came out and gave his air quotes victory speech, where he said we were totally winning, and now they're just like finding other ballots. Anyway,
it just kept counting the votes, and they shouldn't have, because it was.
So I just want to briefly touch on my emotional response to the results. I was very sad that it could have been so close, right? I fell into the trap of, and I've since heard discussion about this, where people think that probabilities are related to vote percentages. And I didn't go all in on this, but some part of me misinterpreted the fact that 538 said that there was a 90% chance that Biden would win. And part of me hearing that thought, oh, that means that almost 90% of people are going to vote for Biden, which is the wrong way to take from that. I understand that percentages, a percent chance and percent vote, are totally different things, but darn if the stupid brain doesn't equate the two. And so I was depressed that it was even close at all. Like, how 70 million people, after watching the last 4 years, could be like, yeah, I'll take more of this. And so let's talk about that.
There's something about this that's pretty remarkable in that point, is that we have known for some time that the percentage of the voting public that was Trump's base, at least the numbers we've been banding about, are 38, as high as 42%, something like that. But it was nowhere near 48, 49%. And so what Trump did in his mega virus spreading fucking mega rallies was he successfully turned out the vote, where literally every second or third voter who was his brought somebody new to the polls. And these are people who are not polled. These are things that weren't considered. These were people who just said, come on, Johnny, get in the truck, let's go vote.
Right.
And he did a masterful job. He got more votes than anyone in the history of the voting public. There's only one person who beat his incredibly high record of 70 plus million. Nobody's come that close to 70 million like Donald Trump. There's only one guy who beat him.
Yeah, but as a percentage of the population, let's put a denominator on that.
What percent of the voting public voted?
Right, because you could say it was the most ever, but it's like there's more people ever.
That's a piece of data I don't know. You can Google it and tell us at a moment's notice. But it was the highest turnout ever. You've got
true, but there are more Americans than ever.
Don't equivocate on that point. I'm sure I'm right.
But yes, you are correct that he definitely turned out a lot of people that were not registered and that did not respond to polls. And man, it really makes one question: what the fuck are polls good for? And should we respect anything? Like, I understand that the individual campaigns need to do polling so they can know where they need to focus their energies. Fine. But as the public and the news watching public, how important are polls to be reported on? I think that should drastically be reduced. I think that the latest polls show that it's beating so-and-so by so many points. That sort of reporting needs to just go the fuck away, because the polling strategy, the polling mechanisms where they call fucking landlines, and if someone on the landline picks up and wants to give you the time of day, then you get their response. Like, how is that at all related to voting?
The sample's bad.
Right.
The sample's bad, and the sample isn't as sophisticated as Trump. Trump has the most unique capability of any president in the history of the United States to be able to turn out the vote. He absolutely overperformed in turning out the vote. In every red county, he got more and more votes. Whoever would have thunk that someone running for president who got literally 70 million votes lost? We never would have believed it. And here comes Biden with 75. Imagine that Biden's already got 6 million more votes than Barack Obama. And that turnout during that election was stunning. Stunning. It's a broader base. It's a more diverse base. And here's the prospect.
Well, I think Trump turned out more Republican voters and more Democratic voters.
True. There was a uniquely high...
Who the hell cared about voting against McCain in the way that people cared about voting against Trump?
His stand on McCain cost him Arizona. And to Mrs. McCain for making sure that happened. Her ad was one of the most effective ads. But so the guy to listen to, who I saw yesterday, who you can link up with because it ended up on the major news feeds today, was Michael Cohen, the lawyer, Trump's fixer, who said, and it's so on point, I think, where he says, you know what? Trump's going to take a Christmas vacation down to Mar-a-Lago, where he does, and he's never going back to Washington. He's not going to show up for the inauguration. He's not going to be there for any transition. He's never going to go back.
Right.
And all this is about, he says, all this is about is him building his multi-world media company, because you have to understand this about him, is that he doesn't otherwise have an income. He's property rich. He's cash poor. He doesn't have a way to make money. And it's nothing more complicated than that. He said, but don't look for him to go back after Christmas. Why should he? He can't let, as another analyst said in the Atlantic, he can't let the narrative ever be from him other than he was robbed of the election.
Right.
That's his whole shtick. So he can't be part of footage that ever admits that. It's and you and I both know, as I'm sure everyone listening would agree, is that's impossible to imagine unless, of course, it's Donald fucking Trump. And
there was
it's so weak. Biden almost ignores it right now, which I think is sound. He's whatever. He said it's embarrassing, and it isn't going to slow us down. I'm the president-elect. We're moving forward. It's excellent. It's excellent.
There was a headline today. You remember how Trump wanted to ban TikTok from the United States? There's this headline today that said that TikTok, that apparently the Trump administration has forgotten about their desire to ban TikTok, and TikTok is like, so what are you guys doing over there? Are you going to do something about this? And it's, of course, everything that they were previously doing anything about has been thrown out the window. And
imagine, how long do you think it's been since Donald Trump had a national security briefing? How long do you think it's been since he's attended a COVID-19 task force meeting? It's been not weeks, it's been months.
Yeah.
And this fucking Kellyanne bullshitter who comes out and someone says, what's the president been doing? And she said, as we've reported, as he said, as he continues to work while he makes certain that this is an American election we can be proud of, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And being fueled, of course, if they put out the fire of the millions of voters, particularly in Georgia, if they put out the fire that the election was robbed, it's going to affect the turnout for the Republicans in the two special Senate runoff races, that if they go and if they would both win Democrat, the Senate would be tied and Vice President Kamala Harris would be the deciding vote. So in order to keep those people ginned up, Mitch McConnell and his
who fucking won again.
Right.
Kentucky.
You bet we aren't going to declare this. Show up, because democracy as we know it in the Confederacy is at stake. So show up in great numbers. Bring your pickup trucks. Bring your fucking guns and show up. That's what they want. That ends on January 5th with the runoff races, for fucking Christ's sake. January 5th. And inauguration is 15 days later. That's after the Electoral College.
How can you...
A month, or which is December 14th. 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
It's so two-faced to be against counting votes, but also rallying the vote for another election at the same time.
You sent me Saturday Night Live's cold open that hit that, where he was saying stop the vote, and
right.
the press secretary went over to him, and he said no. And I like that. There were moments where Trump supporters were shouting
stop the vote, stop the vote. When in a place like Arizona or wherever where Biden was ahead, and stopping the vote would have meant bad for Trump, but they just
okay, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll stop it now. I won. Thank you.
And also, so that's the whole problem that I have with. If I were of the political party that wanted to disenfranchise the most amount of people, how can you live with yourself? How can you say, I guess you say, I know better than all you idiots, so it's better if you idiots don't vote. But then you go on TV or whatever and you champion democracy, blah, 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 blah. So, I don't know. It's a mess.
So the numbers are astounding. And when I look at the movement, as I started to say earlier, with a 40% base to a 48% expansion for this election, that he is, in fact, the most powerful Republican head of the party in the history of the United States. He's brought in more votes. He's won the benchmark election. He and his familias end up being Donald Trump Jr.
Hey, did you know that Lincoln was Republican? Not many people know this.
Who's saying? Who knew that? Who knew that? Everybody's been asking that. Everybody's been saying. Everywhere I go. So who knew?
Okay, so you say he's the biggest, most popular.
Jimmy Kimmel says he has a theory about this. He said it wasn't an assassination. This is what happened when he was up in the balcony watching the play. He had a premonition of what the Republican Party was going to become in 2020, and he pulled out a pistol and he killed himself.
Wait, is this like Elvis, where like Lincoln is really still alive, and it's a conspiracy?
He killed.
I think we need some Lincoln truthers to get together and like really investigate this, because the common narrative is obviously that he was assassinated, but do we really have proof? Right?
Well, this whole shtick, this Jimmy Kimmel shtick was the roast of the annual Correspondents' Dinner, and the presidents and President Obama for years and years was the host, and they always had a comedian. And I ended up binge watching these. I don't know what struck me was post-election. This is so funny, where it started out with Obama's best comebacks to the Republicans, and it showed his final State of the Union address, where he said to the audience, to the Congress, he said, "I can't run for any more elections." And then a little surprisingly, a couple of Republicans started clapping, and he looked at him and smiled, and he said, "Yeah, that's right, because I won them both." Nice. And the whole crowd laughed, and he had a huge smile on his face. And so I went from there to the dinner. I couldn't help myself, where he roasted Donald Trump,
which many people blame on
the reason that Trump ran,
right?
Because he was ridiculed. That took me to the Al Smith dinner, where Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump shared the dais, and it is the worst performance by Hillary Clinton that exists on tape. And Donald Trump is shown with his wife laughing at what Hillary is saying, and it was remarkable in that I don't remember ever seeing
he's never laughed
any video where Trump was actually laughing. And it was this interesting look. She bombed. She fucking bombed. Then I saw that, and then I went, whoa, and then I went to, and it was Seth Meyers.
Yeah, I understand how YouTube works.
And he delivered. And then from there, but here's the final one, was Conan O'Brien. And I saw him last, because after that it was like drop the mic. He was so much funnier than anybody, although Twanda Sykes had the best pauses of any of the comedians I saw at this dinner. She was just so comfortable letting the joke settle and the chuckling keep up until she went to her next one, where Jimmy Kimmel was one joke after another, like rapid fire.
You have to be so confident to let your joke just sit there and because as a speaker, you want to fill every moment with sound, which is why we make all of these or whatever sounds. But to be able to say a thing and then shut the fuck up for 5 seconds. 5 seconds when you are in front of a crowd of people is an eternity. So anyway. She's
noteworthy. They're all interesting for their own effect. But here's the thing about Conan O'Brien, which made it funnier than anything, was two things that were not planned at all, which he's a stand-up performer. He found in the podium for reasons he didn't understand, a gavel. And so during his jokes, he reached down and he held it up and he said, "There's a gavel here, and I have no idea why." And he started pounding it and ended up becoming part of the bit.
Sure.
That was just hilarious. And the other thing he did was he went into a voice that surprised even himself, which made him laugh out loud for quite a while. And it was very funny. He outdid everyone. You have to.
If I can find whatever Dennis just talked about in the show notes, they will be there. Yeah. Conan O'Brien is a competitor of ours. He has switched to podcasting and has a comedy podcast where he interviews celebrity comics. And I do enjoy his output there. So.
He's funny. He's outrageous.
Apparently there was a thing going around where either Trump was doing something where like he had some like fat folds under his chin or something, or one of his supporters did. But somebody, when that was going around, somebody sent me this image and I have to show it. I have to send it to you. And it took me a moment. Look in your chat. This is a Photoshop job that made me laugh. It's so. This will be in the show art for this chapter or in the show notes. You can find it.
Oh, wherever in the world. Oh,
somebody did this.
God. Oh.
It's so well done. Anyway, we won't even here. Let's not even say what this is a picture of. We will force people to go to happyhour.fm/084 and watch what we just laughed at. Anyway.
So here's an interesting piece of information. So this thing came across my feed where the 2024 wannabes running for president are all showing up in Georgia in short order. And it's veritable. Yeah, of course they're going, because this is the start of it for 2024. Marco Rubio.
Oh, my God.
A very young dude. And actually...
Compared to what is presidential these days.
Something's going. What's that?
Compared to what is presidential these days, being under 60 is a whippersnapper.
Right, as you say, that's a low bar.
Or 70. Yeah.
But at any rate...
Rubio seems... If you had asked me to guess who would be running against Joe and or Kamala come 4 years from now, I would definitely choose Rubio. He seems clever and...
He's gonna run against Trump in the primary?
Trump's not going to run in the primary. No, he isn't.
Yes, he is.
How much do you want to bet?
He's going to announce his decision to run in 2024 on January 21st, and for the next 4 years,
it's rallies all the time.
He's going to be holding rallies because he's running against Joe Biden, and as he does these rallies, he now will have to attend to local law because he won't have the standing of the president to overwhelm that law. But it's part of he's going to get the election back. He's going to get the office back. In fact, he's still president. And there's going to be 35-40% of the people in America who are going to say, yep, he's the guy we think was president. And this shift creates for him, here's the gap that Trump has to hit. He has to go from the 38 to 42 that's his base to the 46-47 that ended up voting for him. If he starts to creep up into that, we came with cousin Johnny voting.
Right.
There's a number of people who voted for Trump less than, meaning they weren't going to vote for Joe Biden, and his bunch of liberal, left-leaning, not even that. There's a lot of people that just don't, liberals enough. Socialism, that isn't the line that has to be crossed for them. It's just being liberal.
Right.
And that's a huge number of the American people. They're not paying that much attention. They're not digging into this thing like we dig into it. When it comes time to vote, they go, you know what? These liberals, fuck them. I'm not a liberal. I'm conservative. Trump, he sucks, but he doesn't suck as bad as fucking Joe Biden, period. Those people, those are the ones where we have to say, what about this? What about that? And they say to us, we don't give a fuck. We're just trying to live our fucking lives. We're not following politics. We don't like the fucking liberal philosophy. Just get that's it. We have to understand them.
So before we get to January 21st, your opinion of what is going to happen between now and then is that Trump's just going to abandon all responsibilities and play golf and drink champagne, or not drink champagne. He doesn't do that.
No,
he
doesn't.
He doesn't drink, but
If he drank, they have better president.
Yeah, the equivalent of drinking champagne down in Mar-a-Lago for the next
He's
2
eating
months. Cheeseburgers and golf. And last episode, you hypothesized that he might leave the country and go live in Scotland or something.
If they don't extradite.
Right. So will any of his crimes come to bite him? Stuff.
There's no doubt that they will. He's part of what he's doing is he wants to have standing in the court, which is pending cases that question the legitimacy of Biden's presidency.
Right.
And as long as these are pending, right now he won one case. He's put in 13. He lost 12. The one he won, he called it his little crazy fit of I won, I'm not taking questions. He walked off the stage. He looked like a fucking idiot, fucking mumbling shit. Fucking all this crazy stuff that he said had happened, claiming that the officials in Georgia were Democrats and fucking crooked, and the Republicans who were in the Secretary of State and the governor's office said, wait a minute, we're Republicans too, bro. And now they're calling for them to resign. They're Republicans.
I totally understand, and by that I don't totally understand, that there are lawyers that will defend any old scumbag. Even if they think that they're guilty, they will do their job to defend that person on the knowledge that they will get paid handsomely and whatever. But so my point is, can you do that for someone who is infamous for not paying their bills? At what point do you wonder, will I get paid if I defend this motherfucker?
Michael Cohen would say, no, you won't get paid. But here's a question for you. How do you get a lawyer out of a tree? Cut the rope.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Whoever is defending him will.
Well, one major firm had a resignation from a member of the firm. There's details online, obviously, but where he said, you know what, this is bullshit. I'm not going to be part of this, and he resigned. And the company says he'd been planning to resign for months or whatever.
Right.
And here's the thing, Uncle Joe, he's got some of the brightest fucking people of our fucking generation who are fucking helping him think these things through, everything. He's got more money than fucking God. And he's able to promote the same message, which got him 6 million more votes than Barack Obama. Unprecedented support. And which, of course, ironically, very well could be 306 electoral college delegates, which is exactly the number that Trump got, which he called at the time, it was a landslide. It was a landslide.
Yeah. So, do we have something else to talk about?
So, you know the story that I had a pooling of water in the area behind the shed where all my shelves and whatnot are. I mentioned this on one of the prior episodes.
For sure.
Where it was always a problem. And so one day, I was at that stage of the workday where I said, what the fuck? And I went and I got a sledgehammer. And even with my bad right shoulder, which reverberates like a fucking jackhammer with a sledgehammer, I banged the concrete enough times, full force, to be able to begin a crack.
Yeah,
and within 35 to 40 minutes, I had cracked through an opening that was about 24 inches by 36 inches, and I was at dirt. I stacked all the shit up on the side, and I began digging with the shovel. And I dug in, and then I hit about 1.5 feet down in the ground what appeared to be an ancient red brick, which back in the day
not the one that the prophecy foretold.
Well, judge this for yourself.
Okay.
So I as we'll learn later, is a funny thing, is I found this brick and I decided to dig it out. And much to I wasn't surprised because I wondered. I took the brick out for one reason, and that was to see whether there was another brick under it. Have I hit a proverbial brick wall? And this is what I discovered as I dug that brick out with crowbar and sledgehammer and pick and bam, bam, bam. Pulled it out, and lo and behold, not only was there a brick below it, there were bricks on either side of it, and they were curved.
Curved.
So I began to dig, assuming there was a
structure.
circle of bricks, and then in the center,
This is an ancient
I
rune.
started digging with my post hole digger in the center of what appeared to be a circle of bricks that was 18 inches across.
No.
Because I could see the bricks protruding because I had dug through. I began to do it, and then suddenly,
The Holy Grail.
it was like the bottom fell out of the hole. And it went down, and I realized that what that was, a drain of some kind from 110 years ago. And the place in the concrete where I busted through happened to be right over the old.
You know what I say about this?
It was like the cask of a Amontillado.
You have done well, my friend.
And I look.
That's why all the water was there. The water was welling up.
That's why that was the place on the concrete where it swaled. Not swaled. It actually was the opposite of a swale. I think a swale is a lump. What's the opposite of a swale? An indention.
I don't know. I'm not feeling too swale.
That's all swaling good, but you still got water on your concrete. So I go and I think I'm going to do a drain, and I go and I see Tom at Consumers Concrete. This is a big shout out to Tom. Tom is the dude, by the way, who you'll remember.
Tommy, my boy.
Because I told you when I had to figure out how the fuck to fix this concrete house and what mixture of sand and cement and stone I needed to use shovelful by shovelful like a formula to be able to mix up to throw shit at the house. This was Tom. He told me that.
Nice.
I go back to Tom and I say, Tom, this is the deal. I went out to your yard. I found a 16-inch pipe. That pipe, if I drilled holes in it, would be perforated. It would fit right down into that 18-inch shaft into this well, which, by the way, had a tunnel-looking thing to one side, and then to the other side, parallel with it, a tunnel going in. It was actually called a drain basin that other drains came into back in the day, 110 years ago.
Could you crawl into your neighbor's yard and pop your head up in their toilet and be like, howdy, neighbor?
Listen. So you know the story. Back in the day, I told you, when I was a kid, that we used to dig holes underground and make caves and forts where we used to hang out underground. Well, this was what we would look for. It's a place where there was already a tunnel. And so that shit was fairly loose. So with my post hole digger, I went down 5 feet. So I'm telling Tom, and I say, you got these big round perforated double wall PVC pipe that are 15 inches around, fit in there, and I could get a cover. He said, the price of the cover, you're going to go crazy. I said, how much? He said, $160. I said, that's stupid. He said, what are you draining? Or is water going to come up from this spot, or is it going to go down? I said, it's all down. He said, you don't need to drain. Just fill it full of stone. Forget the extra step of putting a perforated pipe in there. Just fill it full of stone.
Just get stoned, man.
So I went to Top Grade Aggregates. So hats off to Tom. Hats off to Top Grade Aggregates.
That's where I got my stone.
Man, I want to get a $25 minimum, which is 1 ton of river stone. 1 ton of river stone, which I've got
to fill a tiny little hole.
Bottom. What's that?
You need a ton of river stone to fill a tiny little hole?
No, it wasn't a tiny hole. It was actually, I will tell you, it was 1/2 ton of stone. That's how big the hole was. I went down 5 feet. Because when I started to go down, you want to find sand or other porous soil so that when the water hits that, it tends to go. You hit clay, you don't want clay.
Gotcha.
And what was interesting, I found 2 old bags of sand that I don't know, the plastic bags from so many years ago, which might have gone down the drain or what. And then I found a layer of burnt material. Like at some place, had it been a fireplace, or was that where they rinsed out their, I don't know. It was the funniest soil because it was really old, 40, 50, 60 years old.
I think you're
organic material mixed with soil. It was loamy.
You're dealing with ancient spirits here. I think that this could be some sort of a burial ground where you're going to have to deal with putting stone atop these poor souls that were buried here. And you're calling them loamy.
Tassi.
Oh, no.
Lego.
Dennis has been taken over by some sort of spirit creature.
Siam.
Okay.
What a silly goose I am. Don't.
Don't.
You didn't. You didn't know the whole time I did that where I was headed. This is not one of your sharpest moments. What are you drinking there? I saw you lift it. It looked like scotch. Where's the wiki?
It is a scotch and a whiskey. Yes.
I meant to tell you that this is Ellison Brewing Company in Michigan, Amber Ale.
Ooh.
I got a can.
And
it was $10 for 4 of these larger cans. And I must say that now that I'm on the last can, I rather like it. And then a follow-up is, of course, as you would guess, my favorite.
Smithix. So this past weekend, I showed my kids a classic movie from 1982. I showed my children E.T.
Oh.
And I had mostly forgotten everything about E.T. aside from the bicycle flying in front of the moon and the E.T. phone home with the light on the finger and all of the common tropes that are just known. And so it really pulled me along with the narrative. Like, I wasn't sure what was going to happen moment to moment in a way.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
It let me re-experience that movie fresh. And
that's lovely.
Holy fuck, what a good movie that is.
Oh yeah.
First of all,
it's amazing.
There were a lot of times where I was like, that's some clever cinema trickery you're doing there, Steven. Where for a long time in the movie, there is this bad guy authority figure that you never see his face. You only see his belt with some keys jangling, which I had not remembered at all. But there's seven different scenes where you see this guy with his keys jangling around, and you're like, oh, that's clearly a bad guy. And later, when you are introduced to that person, it turns out he's actually an okay guy. And just what a nice movie it was. And the single mother. Okay, so a couple of things that occurred to me as a grown-up. First of all, they totally don't understand. Whoever made the movie doesn't understand how the moon works, because there were a couple scenes where the moon was just a static backdrop, obviously a matte thing that, like, 4 hours later, the moon was in the same place as it was previously in the sky. Like, that's bullshit. So, come on. But the mother, who was this busy 80s businesswoman, either she was making a whole bunch of money, or her recently, like, she had recently separated from her husband. They had a pretty sweet freaking house for that particular time. No, in the middle of
neighborhood, right?
In the neighborhood in LA is where it is, I think.
And a cornfield behind it?
There is some corn, yes, but it's suburban LA, I think.
Suburban.
But not that there's a lot of corn in LA, which is another great point, because they're in freaking Los Angeles, and for some reason they have a cornfield behind them.
One of the scenes I've returned to year after year, which is hilarious, is the closet scene where E.T. ends up dressed like a girl doll. And he and Elliot both scream out loud and then run in the other direction. It is one of the most hilarious scenes ever. There's a touching documentary of the now adult actor reminiscing about what it was like to shoot that movie, and the absolutely loving relationship that he had with Steven Spielberg, who just encouraged him to do what he could do. And the iconic scenes, his sadness over E.T.'s dangers was one of the most tender moments in screen history of any kind. Just, if that doesn't move you, then check your fucking veins for ice, right?
I had totally forgotten that there's a part where E.T. dies.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, first of all, it's ridiculous that medical doctors could potentially treat any sort of alien, guessing on if it needs oxygen or whatever. And there's one moment where they say, we've shown that it has DNA, but instead of 4 molecules, it's got 6. And that's like a throwaway line in the movie. But they do this, and if you had asked me when E.T. had died, if E.T. was going to come back to life and then go off back to his planet, at the moment, I would have been like, I can't remember. I don't know. And the whole, I don't know. It wasn't, I don't know. It was very pleasing, and my kids were riveted the whole time. And that's not true of most 80s movies. If I show 80s movies to my kids, they go so slowly. And first of all, it takes 14 minutes of credits at the beginning of the movie, because that's what the way the movies were back then. You have to just sit through who are all these people in the movie, blah, blah, blah.
Instead of just starting the movie.
Exactly.
Thank God.
And of course, my kids were like, I wish I had a closet with 14,000 stuffed animals in it, like Elliot. What sort of money are these people making? Anyway, it was, and also another thing that they did really well that I appreciated was they did a lot of showing but not explaining. So when the government people come in and they start covering up the house and they start having their hazmat suits on, there's no explanation of what's going on. It's just, and my kids were like, "What the fuck movie is this now?" And there were a couple times in the movie where it took a turn sideways, where my kids were like, sinister. "What is going on here?"
Sinister,
absolutely
sinister.
And at the beginning, like, they try to make it a scary movie. It's supposed to, I think they released it like around Halloween. It was supposed to be a sort of a scary movie, like at the beginning, where there's something in the shed that is like throwing the baseball back at you.
Rattling around.
And it's supposed to be scary. But anyway, it was a total success with my kids in a way that no other 80s movie, I don't think, could possibly come close. As I've mentioned before, I will not show them Jaws, because that will fuck them up for life. But
Robert Shaw, the fine actor that we talked about before, is the skipper of the boat. There was a touching moment where Richard Dreyfuss was being interviewed, pretty recent. So he's in his late 70s, I would say, for sure. And he was introduced backstage to the granddaughter of Robert Shaw, who he was in Ireland recording this interview, and was gracious enough to meet this. And he completely broke down, both in the green room where he met her and then on air. It was very touching. And they showed Robert Shaw's granddaughter listening to what Richard Dreyfuss was saying on stage during the interview about how touching it was and what a wonderful man he was. And she now is tearful. I don't see a lot of stuff that makes me feel that emotional, because it's just, so much of it is contrived and whatever, but it's really touching to see that.
Yeah. So I haven't been watching any other of our TV shows that I am supposed to be watching. Like, I haven't watched any of the Undoing, is that what it's called?
Too bad, because I'm caught up.
So that's my homework for next time. What I have been watching, and you are not a Netflix-enabled citizen yet for some reason, there's a Netflix original show called The Queen's Gambit. When I say The Queen's Gambit, do you know what that means?
Just that I know, I've heard that title.
But do you know what The Queen's Gambit refers to?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Is it a chess move?
Well done. Yes, it is. I'm only a couple episodes in, but it's this story based in the 1960s of an orphan girl who learns to play chess and is really clever. And it's
yes, I've heard an interview on NPR with the actress.
Okay, so
yes.
It's on the one hand, I love it, but on the other hand, I'm aware that it's pushing all of my buttons of, wouldn't it be nice if you were just smarter than everyone else and no one realized it, but you could defeat everyone because you're so smart. That is totally.
You'll never have to worry about that.
That's totally a fantasy. I know, exactly. That's totally a fantasy that many of us have, and it's playing on that fantasy in the show. But it's pretty freaking good, and it's well made, and I will continue to watch that, and then try and get to the Undoing, and I think I've sort of
off of. I look forward to talking to you about that. I wasn't able to follow Hugh Laurie because, unlike, which is typical, is after 9 p.m. But that, unlike in HBO, like The Undoing, you can't just scan when it's going to be shown again. They don't do that. They don't show it. They show it just episode by episode. They don't keep showing it through the week, which is too bad. So I'll figure that out later. But I am getting the Geek Squad out here, so I'm going to be programming for Netflix throughout the house. So
that's gonna improve the future content of this podcast or whatever this is.
Well, it's a low bar.
Yeah, it is a low bar. So I'm so pleased that we were able to talk for a while about something other than,
I got to tell you the lawnmower incident.
Oh shit.
So in the back area on the other side of my shed where I built the drain that I've mentioned, now filled with riverstone.
Do you need some trimming in your back area, Dennis?
I bought a half ton of stone. What do you think it cost me? I loaded it myself with a shovel. A half ton of stone in the back of a half ton pickup truck. What do you think it cost me?
A half ton is 1,000 pounds. Yes?
Yes.
What does a half ton of stone cost you?
Half inch to 3/4 inch stone.
Oh,
G6.
That changes my calculations tremendously. $200.
$11.65.
If you're going to go with the cheap stone, sure. I would spring for the good shit, but whatever.
Your price, interestingly enough, is what it would cost if I would have went to Lowe's and bought bags of stone.
There you go.
Which are $3.97, $4.97 for 20 pounds. So you end up with 12 of them. I saw a man, I think I've said this to you before. I saw a man about my age, loading into the back of a pickup truck.
I saw a man.
20 bags of stone for $4.97 each. 20 bags of stone for, how much is that? And I said, you can get a ton of that for $18.
Down by the quarry.
That's down by the quarry. Down by the quarry, I shot my baby. Oh, no. No, you didn't shoot her. Well,
she was stoned.
So, yeah. So I'm back there, and one of the storage areas is where I'm going to stow my lawnmower for the winter because the snow's coming. It's winter's coming.
The snow is coming.
In order to store it underneath this
I've got to stow my mower
area, this little storage area, you got to take the handle and collapse it. And it's a two-part process. Part one is about halfway up the handle. It's shaped like a U-shaped handle. Mm-hmm. And there's a lever that you pull to make the blade go. But you unscrew it, and it folds down. Simple enough. Folds down. And then at the bottom of the lawnmower, in order to get the bar that holds that handle firm to the body of the mower, there are pins, and you have to squeeze the pins together or expand them to get them out of their loop. And so I could do one on one side, but I couldn't do two together because they required an amount of strength at 24 inches apart that I could actually bend out this rather firm bar that attached this handle to the body of the lawnmower. And I decided that I wouldn't be beat by this hunk of steel. So I crouched down on my hands and knees, and I got exactly in the middle of the handle, and I put my hands out like I was given like Thor, with my arms out, and I grabbed the handles, and I pulled them out. And as I pulled them out, I started to pull them closer to me so that they actually popped out of their pegs. What happened was they not only popped out of their pegs, but they did it with such force that the crossbar hit me in the head and knocked me over on my back.
Wow.
I was dazed and confused. And so as we speak, I have a little puffy area just beneath my eye where the one bar hit. But that was the lawnmower incident.
You are the worst.
The good news is I did collapse it and get it in its storage area. And the bad news is it hurt a bit.
It fought back.
You know what? If that's what it takes, that's what I give up. To get the job done, I'll do it. Okay? Okay?
You're not the best mower stower.
Mower Stower. Whoa. It's like a play on words. What's that called? A poem?
A poem. Yes. And if you want mower, you can come to the Mower Store.
If you want mower,
we will sell you mower.
Come to the Mower Store where the power that we have for your mower is more than what you've ever seen before.
That's the. Yes, you are the best mower stower from before.
And I said, I got this big mower and I don't know where to store it. So I wonder if you got some type of storage unit for the mower. So we can take it mower, power it down out and move it into the store.
Bring it lower.
Lower and further than it's ever gone before. Hey, speaking of physical incongruity, what the fuck with John Rahm's hole-in-one in a practice round at Augusta? It
That's
skips
my
twice on
boy.
water, comes up on, I know, man. You got like a signed hat,
Okay, so hold on.
right?
That was a hole-in-one. So they do this thing on hole 16 when they're practicing where everyone skips off the water. That's just a tradition.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, everyone does that.
I didn't know that.
It was not a mishit. He intentionally tried to do that. But the crazy fucking thing is that the day before, he also had a hole-in-one. 2 days in a row, holes in one, the Masters. The first autumn Masters, John Rahm is going to take it all, green jacket, bring it home to Spain.
He's in the top,
yeah, boy.
In the top three of most pundits review. Guess where they put Tiger? In the top 20.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Where do you think?
In the top 20, 18.
20.
That makes sense. If you said top 20.
Yeah, but is that, you agree? The talent is huge, but
I'm not following the field enough to opine about the Woods man. But yeah, my money's on Rahm. It's the only pro golfer I've ever met. And
DeChambeau's down to number 9, which I think is in the one review I read, which is sure there's differing opinions, but
number 9.
But there's a story out there where he had a 465-yard par 4. Check me if I'm right about this. And went over it, 465 yards, went over it with an 8-iron.
I mean, we've all done that. Not on the second shot.
Oh, whenever I see a DeChambeau and read The World of Golf, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on air, when we golf down in Myrtle Beach, as we do annually for years, and on a very difficult par 5 that sits up on top of a knoll, which is nearly impossible to stay on, your second shot on a par 5 inexplicably landed in the crotch of a decaying tree that was in the rough but not out of bounds. And you got up to the partly hollowed out, rotted log with some type of a short iron and hit it within 17 feet of the pin. It was the single most remarkable odd in regulation that I've ever witnessed personally in my life. It was you at your best. Here's to you in that shot. I just got to say, for the golfing world, this was astounding. Look, it was in the crux of the hollow of a tree.
I wish I remembered that, but I'll drink to it anyway.
You don't remember it? Is that true, or are you lying?
I made crotches all the time.
Yeah, hollowed out, half rotting crotches all the time. That's nice. That's really nice. Oh, so there was some autumn ballet next door to me, and in the large 3+ acre lot yard of my neighbor here in Kalamazoo, which I've spoken of before.
What is autumn ballet?
The fence, where the leaf blower, the leaf gatherers, who ended up creating a mound of leaves on the curb that, I kid you not, at its height is 6 foot deep, and it goes up the entire expanse, 100-yard frontage of this acreage.
Did you jump into the pile, Dennis?
If I would have, I'd still be there now. So no, because I would never have been able to get out. But there was this young kid who is a handsome lad and a tall dude, and he had on the biggest power vac motorized that money can buy, with a 6-inch hose that's attached to a wand that goes up on his back along with the pack. And he got the leaves to roil in almost a wave-like circular swirl of leaves that moved them like a line up the side of the property, with getting nary a leaf on my property, which stood a mere 14 or 15 feet away. Imagine 14 feet from my fence. There is a swirl of leaves that's 12 feet high that this dude is swirling to push up the yard, and nothing came my way to speak of.
A leaf-nado.
Autumn, a leaf-ado.
Leaf-nado.
A leaf-ado.
Yeah. It's a tornado of leaves. A leaf-nado.
Leaf-nado.
If we want to talk Italian, we can talk Italian. We can call it a leaf-nado.
NPR today does a story of a book or a column or whatever this dude wrote that is like the longest beer run ever, where he's from this neighborhood I think in Brooklyn maybe, where he, just as a civilian, gets a bunch of beer and conspires how to fly it overseas during the Vietnam War and get beers to his friends. They lost 28 comrades in this neighborhood, and he felt compelled just to do this. And he whittled his way to get on this transports where he let the enlisted people know what he was doing, and they let him, and they helped him lie to their superiors, the officers, who moved him through wearing khakis and a Madras shirt and delivered 6 packs of beers to his friends.
What a hero.
All over Vietnam. Oh, my God. And the NPR story, the name of it was like the farthest beer run ever. This dude was just on NPR today. It was astounding. It gives you faith in this world, which is all too predictable sometimes, how somebody could do this shit and for the common good and just get the fuck away with it.
Look,
and do it.
That man might not have been a soldier, but we are recording today on Veterans Day, and I raise a glass to that man who brought beer to his comrades, to his bros, on the front lines, fighting a stupid fucking war. But fucking A, you gotta have your brewskis.
Fucking A. And of the 6 guys that he delivered beer to, 4 of them are still came back.
Oh, okay. Four out of 6.
And so he was in the NPR, which you could find in posts, I'm sure, is that he was just so thankful that he and his friends and the love that occurs there. And his stories, the way that he went about this was he would tell the higher ups, he said, look, I could tell you what I'm doing here, but if I did, you would never believe it. And the higher ups thought, all right, we better let him in. He must be CIA and why else would he be dressed in khakis and a Madras shirt? Obviously, he's got some kind of standing where he's not a civilian. He's not on all these military planes and in these military buildings and these military missions as a civilian. He said nobody considered me a civilian. Why? There was no way that a civilian would be engaged in doing this work. They figured that I was in the military, connected to the military, and he did this.
That is why 90% of being there is confidence, of being like, yeah, I fucking deserve to be here. It's like that Catch Me If You Can movie with Tom Hanks and Leo.
So I had several incidents in my life where that was the view I had to take when I had to produce had some type of a scam, usually had to do with a hotel where, let's say, the bar was closed and they wouldn't let people in, and it had to be a guest and you had to have a ticket. And I would walk up and I would say, I'm here for the la la reception, but I'm afraid I don't have my ticket. And they would say, sorry, and you become not outraged, but enough to know that this could get a lot worse. Right. And if you have to mention the manager, you mention the manager. The other time was to let me in an airplane, that if I missed it, I'd have to wait all night. And I told them that I hadn't had my medication. I needed to get on the board to get medication. And they opened the fucking door and let me in. Now, that was a terrible thing to do, probably, in hindsight. But if I missed that flight, it was all shit to happen to my life. And I'm like, let me the fuck in. And so I took that pose of absolute, I'm right here.
Nice. Yeah, that was my favorite part of I don't know if you've seen the movie, the Ocean's 8, the remake of the Ocean's 11 and the Ocean's 12 and then the Ocean's 8, which is with the all-women cast.
Yeah, I saw it.
And the beginning of that, where Sandra Bullock just walks into a room, tells the housekeeper, you can leave now, and then just with that level of confidence, like, I fucking belong here, that allows her to scam her way into just about anything, as she did with, I don't know, clothes and stuff in the mall or whatever. But that level of
it's
just
knowing,
like, convincing yourself that you belong in a place, and then exuding that to everyone else makes everyone else be like, oh shit, this person must need to be here.
When I stole the golf cart on the golf course many years ago, I'm sure I've told you the story before, and when it was clear that the people who ran the golf course were after me because I had stolen this golf cart, I went out to visit the beer girl years ago, and over the radio that she had her beer tent, it came on and said, there's a guy who's taking one of the golf carts, so we need to go out and find him. I don't know what's going on here, but he's not allowed to be out there. I said, oh shit, I gotta go. So I drove the golf cart and I drove across the fairways to get to the best possible place. But then I saw approaching me in an area where I had no recourse was 2 golf carts, one man in each golf cart, each in the uniform, the polo shirts of the golf course, obviously, and we were looking for this guy. And so I got out of the golf cart and I said, I am so upset. I left my sand wedge out here and nobody will help me. I'm out here looking for it. I can't find it. I hope one of you has it. And they looked at each other.
So good.
And I said, I figured as much. And I jumped back in the cart and I drove right in between them until it was clear to them that I had hoodwinked them. And they came after me and I skirted around the building toward the parking lot. And as I did, I jutted out into the lane where people were leaving the parking lot to get onto the main street. And I had to swerve to not hit the Cadillac that was being driven by the deputy director of the Department of Corrections. And we both swerved, and he went on his way, and I abandoned my golf cart and ran into the area and stood at a table very quickly as these guys in their polo shirts were looking. They could see the golf cart. I had escaped. But it was all because of that. And it was so unnerving to them, where it's like, what are you not listening to me? Where's my golf club? Oh, I figured as much. I'm going back and just drive away. And they're like, that's not the guy, is it? I mean, that makes sense.
God, so I want to pull this back. That is exactly what Donald J. Trump would do. He would be like, I deserve to be here. Whatever you think I've done, fuck you, I deserve to be
Trumpian.
here. It's so Trumpian. Whatever you think I've done, you're wrong. I'm fine here. And I have the confidence, I am displaying the alpha male confidence that obviously you are wrong to foster that doubt in people. So that's super depressing. Now we're back to fuckface.
Oh, you can't be depressed now. I got a big kick out of the Joe Biden interview. Just a moment back to that, where when one of the questioners said, "Does the Trump decision not to have the GSA sign the thing?" and Biden scratches his nose and looks at the camera. We're moving forward. It's not that big of a deal, and just smiles this great smile, and it exudes a confidence. Now, I'm sure there's people in his camp who don't feel that way at all, nor should they, because they are, in fact, putting together the legal action that would be required. But the fact of the matter is, legally standing, there's no legal standing until the Electoral College meets. They're trying to stop the certification of state votes. In my fair state here in Michigan, Trump filed a lawsuit, which will be dismissed by the Michigan Supreme Court, that says we want you to stop the certification of votes until you answer our questions. And our questions are this or that and the other. And the court's to say, we can answer your questions. We're not going to stop the process because your questions on their face are pretty ridiculous given the transparency and the automated records we have of how we counted the votes. So it's going to be a whisper rather than a bang. I think, though, this is the thing to be concerned. What's he doing with the Pentagon? Look what he's done with the sale of these fucking bomber jets. To where? To Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
F-135s or some such shits. Fucking $600 million per fucking plane. His distraction, I wish I had my facts a little straighter, but his pattern of distraction to cause all the shit with the election, but at the same time, Jared Kushner and his fucking minions are creating the financial deal of a lifetime where they skim off the fucking top. And just like the fucking account that Trump's got in China, he's got one if this is in Saudi Arabia, and it's worth fucking, he gets a finder's fee. It's 10% of fucking $600 million because he's got no fucking income.
Yeah, but that's not enough for what he owes. Yeah, it's...
No, it's not to pay back. You'll never pay those people
of course
back. This is to be able to live either under pending court protection or overseas, where he can live about any goddamn where he wants. He's not without means as much as we demean him. One of the moments of Clinton's performance at this earlier Al Smith dinner that I mentioned was to say that she was glad to see Michael Bloomberg there. And after debating Trump twice, she wanted to say, it's so good to meet somebody who's actually a billionaire. And how the crowd booed, and Trump thought it was quite funny. Anyway, we're back to that. It's a remarkable time. It's a remarkable time.
It's going to be interesting to see how this goes. Like, in theory, the military elites are smart enough to not follow him, but yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be crazy. And
so your prediction last episode was spot on. Mine was naive and just ridiculous, as it turns out. When I think back about that and think that it isn't any more than that. It isn't. It is simply. It's not that I was being stupid. It was that I was almost purposely being naive to be able to create the ability to sleep a little bit as these things happen.
And that's why I was not able to sleep for the last week. Yes.
What a physical relief. A physical relief the next day. I actually had a deep massage, and shout out to my masseuse, but the same day. And it was feeling better in my skin, feeling better in my psyche. Man. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, baby. So I guess we will see how this progresses. And
Trump's aim will end with a whimper. Trump's end won't end with a bang. Trump's end will end in a whisper. Trump's end won't end in a bang. He'll find himself alone on the veranda, trying to look like a Mussolini as he does, but his Republican friends will all leave him because he has lost once again.
Amen, brother.
That was so good, man. That was wow.
I feel sorry for the other people that are competing for the Grammy. I'd just like to say that in the moment. Good night, Dennis. That does it for episode number 84. You can find the show notes at happyhour.fm/084. And, let's just go forward with this election result and see where it takes us. You can help support us at patreon.com/happyhour. We would love for you to buy us around there, maybe one every month. That would be awesome to help support the show. And we will see you next week.